Hey, you guys. Happy Friday. Woo. Okay. We're going to talk some about sex today, so it's going to be fun. Or it might be not so fun for some of you. But um, anyway, I'm going to just wait for some of you guys to jump on. And I'm going to chit chat a little bit here. So I want to just say, um, that I'm super excited about these Friday lives. And one of our members, after our last week, suggested that I run a poll or a thread on what you guys want to hear about. So I did. I dropped that in the group, and now it's an announcement at the top of the page. One of the first things you see, especially for those who just joined the group. Say hi, you guys, as you're jumping in. I see you jumping in. Um, so I loved that because it really communicated to me a little bit more about what you wanted to hear about. And that's one of the reasons why we're talking about sex and intimacy today. And so these Ask Me Anything Fridays, I think what I want to do with this new format is I'm going to start with a topic that we can discuss. But then at the end, we're still going to have a Q&A, which is open for pretty much anything you want to ask me. So we're going to try to talk about, I'm going to go for probably 20, 25 minutes on this particular topic. Today, I want to talk about the stage one of communication, which is a really big deal in all communication with anybody, but especially communication in your relationship. And I want to talk about how that plays out in the bedroom. But then at the end, if you have questions about just about your relationship in general, we'll do a Q&A. So I also wanted to let any of the new folks here in the group know that this is something that I do every single Friday, and I do it Fridays here at noon. I do other lives off and on during the week. This week I didn't get on a live, you guys. It's been a busy week. So this is something I do off and on, and the replays will be here for you. I also drop these in the Spectrum Straight Talk library as well, which I've mentioned quite a bit in here for you guys. So if you're not in there, that's a good way to be able to get to my content and my lives, and also lives that I'm doing in other groups that you're not in. It's all there. It's $27 a month, which is just, I tried to price that so that it's like less than, fast food for four for you guys, or you can just access it for a lifetime of $89. So that's there for you. Hey, Jen. Hi, Janine. Hi, first timer. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for saying hi. So a couple of other quick announcements before we start. This topic today, the stages of communication, I've really been talking this up in the group this week because this is just really, 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 really important stuff for your relationship. Now, this is important stuff for all relationships, but you guys who are in spectrum relationships, this is fundamental stuff because, as we know, you guys feel like you're speaking different languages, and language barrier is massive. And so getting this communication down is just really critical and fundamental. And this is where so many misunderstandings happen and so much confusion happens. And this is where actually both of you end up feeling abused. And sometimes neurotypical partners are actually surprised to hear that their Asperger's or their autistic partner is feeling abused. Some of you are not surprised to hear that because your spouse has, or your partner has communicated that to you. But that baffles you sometimes because you're not an abusive person. I have been told by my autistic partner that I was a verbally abusive person, and I was absolutely, it was horrifying to me to be called verbally abusive. It is so not who I am. But I've understood a lot more since about this communication breakdown, these stages of communication and the way it breaks down, and it particularly in spectrum relationships. So this is critical stuff. So the announcement that I'm getting to here is that I've put together this group coaching program for you guys because I cannot take you all into my private coaching program. Some of you can't afford it, for one, but the other thing is that the private coaching is very intensive. It's 8 weeks to start of intensive work. We meet at least weekly, sometimes more than that, and I'm in touch with you every single day through messaging. I'm like in the trenches with you. It's like Nanny 911 virtually. If you guys are old enough to remember that show when the nanny moved in with the family and she's like observing and watching and intervening, and it's like that. And so it's a huge time commitment on my part and on my client's part. So I only take in literally like 5 clients at a time. So just so you know, I have a couple of spots opening up in June, and I've already had like 3 people contact me in the last week who are interested in those spots. If it's something you think you might want to do, if you think you're ready for that, definitely contact me, because those spots go fast, and I've got a waiting list. So anyway, so that's the reason why I'm starting this group. I want to do this group for you guys, and it's going to be 6 weeks, and we are going to every week we're going to break down these 4 different stages of communication. And this is not just going to be me talking at you. We're going to be interactive, and we're going to share. We're going to have our own private Facebook group where we're going to be talking about this every day. We will meet every single week where I'm going to be coaching you every single week. But then we're also going to be talking about your actual relationship, and you're gonna be sharing and working with each other actively through that 6 weeks. And so it's going to be I'm really looking forward to working with you guys on this. So that program, I'm going to be starting enrollment on that on Monday, I believe, is when I've got it set up to start, and that is going to be $487 US dollars. And I haven't figured out the exact day that we're going to meet every week, but those weekly coaching sessions will be recorded, and you will have a portal where you can get in and watch the replays if you can't meet live. Live is best, it's great, but if you can't, you'll still get a ton from it, even if you have to watch the replays. So anyway, keep an eye out for that announcement on Monday. All right, so let's talk about stage 1 of communication. So we've been talking about this in the group, and stage 1 of communication is basically what we bring to a conversation. And when we're talking, let's just talk a little bit before we go into the bedroom, and intimacy. What we bring to a conversation. So a breakdown of this, I've got my notes here. This is basically what is already in our mind, what's inside us internally before we even have this conversation. So this is our own theory of mind, which we've been talking about theory of mind. This is our own perspective, our own point of view. So this is where we are, how we see this, how we're approaching this conversation. We also have our own set of terminology and definitions about this particular topic. And this is something that really trips people up in regular relationships, but also in spectrum relationships, because individuals on the spectrum use language differently sometimes. And they may have a use of a word that is very different than your use of a word or a phrase or an expression. And you are both bringing those uses of terminology and definitions to this conversation. And if you don't learn how to, in stage 2 is how we interact. So it's important to know that we're bringing these different definitions into the conversation. And if you don't learn how to clarify to make sure that you're hearing and you're understanding, then there's so much room for misunderstanding and misinterpretation, and then room for feeling confused later on in stage 4 when we recall the conversation. And you recall it one way, he recalls it another way, or she recalls it another way. So that's what we bring. We bring our definitions. We bring our culture, our culture, our values. So this is a big one in a lot of topics, but it's really a big one about sex, right? I mentioned in one of the posts for you guys here this week that I'm from the southeastern United States. Okay. So those of you in the US probably know that this is the Bible Belt. This is called the Bible Belt down here. And so there's a strong, and just so you know, my background is Christian, and so I was raised in this strongly Christian faith community and culture here in the South. And we don't talk about sex down here. We don't, I did have a mother who told me about the birds and the bees, but it's just a taboo topic and it's uncomfortable, and it's just and so we just, it's not something that we did. It was like, for my mother and I were talking this weekend about how she got pregnant. She's a school teacher, and she got pregnant with my brother in the 60s, and she had to stop teaching because she couldn't be a teacher and have a big belly, because then the kids would know she had sex. And so it was, we just don't talk about it. So even now, here we are in the 21st century, and it still feels taboo sometimes. It feels uncomfortable. We don't feel comfortable being sexual beings. And so depending on the culture that you came from and the messages that you got from the culture that you were raised in. Now then we stop and think about, we're bombarded by sexuality in the social media. Not just social media, but the media in general. Sex is everywhere. But as women, we're also bombarded by being objectified. Men are bombarded by being emasculated sexually. And we're bombarded by these ideas about what sex is supposed to be, what it's supposed to look like. Pornography is so accessible now. When we were, depending on what age you are, before the internet came around, the most you could get your hands on was a Playboy magazine to see a naked woman. You could not see men and women actually engaged in sex for free with a Google search. So we're bombarded with all of this, and we don't know what to do with that. It's too easy. It's very easy to access. And yet we still have all these values about what it means. We have guilt, we have shame, we have whatever you're bringing to it. You are bringing this to your conversations with your partner about sex and about intimacy. And so this is a really important, when you decide to talk, when you want to have this conversation with your partner about your sex life, it's really important to before that conversation, to really stop and really get in touch with where you are and what you believe and your values and what those come from, and whether or not they're still yours, or if they're remnants and leftovers from what you were taught to believe, what you were told to believe, what society's telling you to believe. So it's super important to get in touch with yourself on all of that, because you're bringing that into it. Then we also bring just our expectations. And a lot of these expectations are established by our beliefs and our values, what we're seeing in the media, what the books we read, the movies we watch. So what do we expect sex to be? What do we expect our role to be as a sexual partner? What do we expect our husband, our partner's role, our wife's role? Guys, if you're on this call, and I hope you are, or at least you will watch the replay, I tend to speak to women because I'm a woman, and I apologize, but I'm also speaking to you. What do you expect your role to be? What do you expect her role to be? What do you expect his role to be? These things are running like scripts in the background of your mind, and you don't even know it. You don't even realize it. Sometimes we're just not even aware of what these expectations are. And theory of mind means our ability to recognize that someone else has different beliefs and expectations. We even those of us who are neurotypical forget sometimes that others don't have the same expectations as us. And our those of you who are on the spectrum, sometimes it's really hard for you to recognize that what you expect in a sexual relationship and what you are thinking that your role is and what you think satisfaction, sexual satisfaction means, what performance means, is not actually what she expects it to mean. Um, and so there we're going back to definitions and beliefs. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations and to clarify these things, because we come to these conversations with all these preconceived notions. Guys, if you have questions, Janine, I know you haven't been here before, pop them in. And there are only a few of you here today. But I also, if you're watching the replay, pop your questions in the comments afterwards, and I will get back to them as I can. But you guys, I hope you know by now that if you're live with me, ask me questions as I'm going, because I'll just keep talking. Okay. Okay. So something else that we bring is our way of thinking. It's our personality, our way of thinking. Are we black and white thinkers? Do we kind of have this or that? Those on the spectrum, you guys on the spectrum, you're more black and white. You're more it's this or that. Those who are more neurodiverse, who are not on the spectrum, there's a lot more gray. There's a lot more room for middle ground and differences. So this is something else that we bring to these conversations about sex and about our sex life. Again, different values, different perspectives. I'm curious, those of you who are here, what are some other things? What are your thoughts? What kind of things do you bring? I'm going to ask you a question. What do you bring to these conversations about sexuality and intimacy? I'm going to wait on you. Somebody left. They're like, nope, she asked me a question. I don't want to answer. I won't call you out. Anybody brave enough to talk about this? I think it's interesting. I'm just going to point this out. I think it's interesting that in the poll that I ran for you guys, that sex and intimacy was at the top. You guys wanted me to do live on this, but this is like the least attended live that I've done yet. I think that's interesting. And now I've asked you guys questions and you're like, I'm not talking. I don't want to talk. And I'm not, it's okay. I'm not shaming you. I'm not guilting you. I'm just finding it interesting. And there again, I'm not surprised actually, because this is uncomfortable. This is uncomfortable stuff. Sex is one of those topics that it's uncomfortable to talk about. And if you're uncomfortable showing up here in a live, and I'm not judging you, I had to get comfortable talking about it myself. This was not easy for me. Again, Bible Belt girl here. Even as a therapist, I had to get comfortable as a therapist first in my career, and now as a coach, it's kind of old hat, and I've been doing it for 20 years. But I had to get comfortable with it too. So I get it. I'm not shaming you guys. But the fact that less of you are here today, and that you're not just pinging me with questions, this tells me that you are bringing that to your conversations with your partner too. This is uncomfortable, and it's also probably been something that's caused some pain in your relationship. All right, Janine's going to be brave. She says, almost 4 years with my partner. After 1 year, I checked that he is Asperger. Okay, so you're just letting me know. You've been with him for 4 years, and after 1 year, you discovered he has Asperger's. Okay, so, and that is an important discovery. Knowing that helps to understand that these types of discussions, particularly in the bedroom, are going to be they're gonna have their own set of challenges because of this, what we bring to it, the black and white thinking, the even the neurology, the the processing, the ability to talk about it. There's more there that's going to create potential pitfalls for you. For those of you who are on the spectrum, for example, those of you who are watching this replay, you are forming or have formed your ideas about what sex is, and it's going to be super important for you to recognize and understand, come to a place of realization that what your idea of sex is and what you believe is sexual satisfaction, what you believe sex is all about is probably not the same as what your partner believes. And so I encourage you to develop curiosity. Curiosity is a critical component in conversations about sexuality, about your sex life. Ask questions, be curious. Be curious to find out what your partner's beliefs and values are. All right, I want to open this up to you guys. I've kind of done my spiel on this stage 1 of communications, and I want to hear from you what your thoughts and what your questions are. And if you're just joining, that's okay. We're talking about what we bring to our conversations about our sex life and our intimacy and what we bring to the bedroom. So, what do you want to ask me? I'm here for you. Because y'all know if you don't ask me a question, I'll just keep talking. Those of you who've been with me for a while. All right, I'm just going to wait on you. Well, okay, I'm going to keep talking. So, stage 1, what we bring. What I want you guys to do in this next week is I want you to think about your, not just your sex life, your intimate relationships with your partner, but I want you to think about this first stage of communication. Again, drop questions for me as I'm talking. I'm just going to talk so that we're not just sitting here staring at each other. I want you to think about this first stage of communication and how you may have barreled through to discussing something with your partner without really stopping and thinking about what you're bringing to it and what he may be bringing to it as well. And it can be a little dangerous to think about what he may be bringing to it because you could be wrong. It's dangerous to assume. And we do that actually. We do assume we know what he's bringing to it or what she's bringing to it. So it's important to ask and clarify. Jen says, ha ha ha, LOL. To be honest, I wasn't aware that the past connected so much with our sex life. We grew up with such different views. I was in an extremely religious family with a bit of trauma also involved, so it's definitely affected me in the bedroom area. Yeah, and it's going to. And you know, I have mentioned this before, and I'll say it again. So many women who end up with men on the spectrum have a history of trauma. It's very common. I talked to another woman just yesterday who was calling me and wanting to talk about being a private coaching with me, and she had a history of trauma. And we were talking about how I have a history of trauma, and we choose these men because they originally, in the beginning, they seem very stable. They seem very emotionally stable, and that's because they're not nearly as emotionally. We've had this trauma background, which is just like a roller coaster. And if there was a live that I did in another group this past week about the differences between abuse and the behaviors we see in autism. And I was talking about how the abusive relationship is like this roller coaster that's up and down, whereas there is emotional instability in an autistic relationship, but it's more flatline then drop, and then flatline then drop. There's not this high and this low, because the abusive relationship wants to drip feed you with emotional highs. Whereas, we kind of, in an autism relationship, we start to lower the bar sometimes, those of us who are partners, because we don't get those highs as much. But in the beginning, that emotional flat line was attractive to us because we'd had this traumatic background. And I'm getting off on a tangent, but it very much influenced why we chose these men. And now it's affecting how it plays out in all areas of our life, and especially in our sexuality. Angie, hello. Okay, when you tell them things a million times, but it never registers or they dismiss it, what do you do with that? I process it as disrespect and I just give up. Okay, so when you tell them a million times and it never registers or they dismiss it, so what's happening here is there's some kind of error in communicating and receiving. So in communication, it's being communicated and it's being received. So there's this two-way thing. And I was actually, before I got on the call with you guys, I was thinking about this live, and I was thinking about how I've witnessed this happen in my coaching calls, where a couple actually I have them talk to each other, and about sometimes a topic will be, will come up, and so I'm like, okay, talk to each other, and I sit there and I watch them, and literally, she will be talking to him and he will be talking to her, and I'm literally watching them have two totally separate conversations, and they're literally not in the same conversation. And she'll say something, and then he'll say something in response, and then she'll say something in response, and he'll say something. But neither one of them is actually responding to the other. And Angie, you actually said something in the group about this. Sometimes when our partner's talking, we're not really listening. We're actually thinking about what we're going to say next. Sorry, y'all, my nose is itching so bad this spring here. Oh, gotta get it out. Okay. We're thinking about what we're going to say next. And so one of the things I do with my clients is teach reflective listening. And this is super important for everybody, and especially our folks on the spectrum, because it's really important to listen to hear, listen to understand, listen for meaning, to listen to our partner and then reflect back. Okay, what I just heard you say, and not just play it back like a video, like a tape recorder. Oh, I'm showing my age, tape recorder. But play it back like, blah, 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 blah. Parrot it back. Nope, but paraphrase it and say, and this is stage 2, by the way, stage 2. We'll get into that, but how we interact. But yeah, this is what happens is when you're trying to communicate something and it's not being received because you're having two separate conversations. And a lot of times that's back to stage 1, Angie. This is because you bring to the conversation what your goals for the conversation are, and all of your preconceived, all this stuff in the background in your head about it, and he's bringing to it his goals for the conversation and all his stuff, and then you guys are having totally separate conversations. And so he doesn't receive what you say, you don't receive what he says, and then everybody gets frustrated, it derails, it becomes an argument, and it's just and then you guys do it all over again next time. Rehash, boop, bloop, it continues, and it just never gets better because you don't have these tools. You don't have these communication tools. Angie said the trauma applies to you too. Then to get to the trauma added from these relationships feels like the nail in your coffin. Yeah, it does. And we do feel re-traumatized. And it does. It's re-traumatizing. And some of that is our triggers. We're triggered emotionally by our previous trauma. And sometimes what we see what we expect to see, guys. This is a brain phenomenon. This is built into our neurology. When we've lived trauma, this is also what we're bringing to it. Stage 1, we are bringing to our conversations with our spouse, with our partner, our former trauma. So is he, she, whoever your partner is. Any kind of trauma from back there, we're bringing that with us. Okay, and that influences what we're experiencing, and we tend to see what we expect to see, and we hear what we expect to hear. And if we are programmed to hear traumatic, if we're programmed to hear abuse, if we're programmed to be demeaned, if we're programmed to be devalued, if we're programmed to be diminished, it's programming. It's written into the script of our psyche. And so that is what we tend to hear, especially in these Asperger's interactions where you've got someone on the spectrum who is communicating in a way that can really masquerade in a way. It looks like gaslighting, it looks like abuse, but it's really not. It's something different. But we are triggered by this stuff that we're bringing with us. And that's why we feel abused. I've had so many women say, oh, I know he loves me. I know he cares. And he doesn't seem to be like this guy who's trying to hurt me. But everything I'm seeing absolutely looks like abuse. And if it looks like abuse, if it looks like a, whatever that expression is, it is. If it looks like a Brock, what is the expression? I don't know. But the thing is it's not. Now, caveat there, some folks on the spectrum, and guys, if you're here, if you're on the spectrum and you're here, this is not you. Because men who are on the spectrum and men who are abusers don't show up for this kind of stuff. Okay? So if you're here and you're paying attention and you're trying to learn, the chances of you being an abusive, narcissistic kind of personality are next to nil, because those guys don't show up for this stuff. But it is possible to have someone who's on the autism spectrum and the narcissism spectrum, the abusive spectrum. That's possible. So it's possible that you're in a relationship with that guy. That live that I did in another group about this is in my Spectrum library, guys. It was a like 50-minute live about it, and it's a really good one that breaks it down. Okay. Let's see. Let me scroll back here. Janine, yes, you're so right. Jen, yes, unfortunately, because we didn't know our differences, I emotionally disengaged a bit. So happy to be on track. Knowing we both didn't know. Yeah, you did disengage because you didn't know what was going on. I mean, and so you were triggered by it. That's what you were bringing to it. So you were triggered by it. Angie, in the bedroom, I'm the one that shuts down and withdraws because there's so many issues that it pushes me away. I can't connect because it feels like I'm just jumping through hoops when there's so many unresolved issues. I wish guys knew how much addressing other issues really does make the difference in the bedroom. Okay, so yes, it is important for him. It's optimal for him to recognize that addressing other issues makes a difference in the bedroom, but it starts with you knowing this about yourself. And this is something I stress to all of you. It starts with you. And so many of you are like, why do I have to do all the work? Well, you don't. You don't have to do all the work, but you got to do your work. You've got to do your work. And so many of you be like, well, I've been doing so much work all these years. Yes, I know. And I'm not denying that. You have been doing a lot of work all these years, and you feel like he's not been doing any of it. And I get that. I hear you. But if you still have work left to do, and if there's still things you can do to change things up on your end and fix things on your end that it's going to positively benefit your quality of life, your relationship, then why the heck would you not do that? That is a win for you. That is improving your quality of life. That I have no idea why you wouldn't do that. So yes. So Angie, yeah, recognizing what you're bringing to the bedroom, to the relationship, and then doing your work on that. That's what starts with you. And him recognizing it is optimal, and you can keep beating him over the head about it. So I got to do this, this stuff that I got to do. And then we can talk more. That stage 2 is about how to communicate in a way so that you are communicating in a way for him to receive. And that's the interactive part. That's stage 2. Oh, thank you, Lisa. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck. I swear, brain, senior moment there. Thank you. I needed that. Okay. What other questions do you guys have for me? It's 12:35. Um, if you have any other questions about this specifically, it's about sex and intimacy, throw them at me. But I also promised you a Q&A at the end of this about spectrum relationships in general. So, um, what do you got for me? Somebody's laughing at Lisa. Y'all, I swear, my brain just does not give me what I'm trying to say. Sometimes it's just getting old is not fun. All right, Angie. But if I put out to meet his needs, then I feel used. I struggle so much with that. Okay. And this is what you're bringing to it. Okay. So if I put out to meet his needs, then I feel used. Now, there comes a point in a relationship where it's connected in a way that in a healthy relationship that's connected that and again I want to emphasize that in a healthy connected relationship it's very it can feel fine. Did I lose you guys? Oh wait. Okay, you're still there. It looked like I lost you guys. Anyway, in a very healthy relationship, we can give ourselves to our men in moments that we just aren't in it. You know, we can give we can be like, you know what, I'm not in it, but you know, I realize you need it. So have at it. That really doesn't come until you feel a healthy connection. And so if you're not there yet, you're just not there yet. And that's okay. And that's you know, that's a boundary you can have. You can have that. But I have absolutely seen healthy sexual relationships when couples get to that place where women and men, sometimes men actually are not ready to go all the time, and they get to a point where women are like, look, I really need this, you know, I need it, and guys are like, I'm not really in it, and the women are like, come on, you know, just, I need it, and men are like, men are less likely to feel used. It's the truth, but sometimes men just aren't in it. But they're willing to go there for their spouses. Men on the spectrum have a little bit harder time with that. But there again, that goes back to those conversations are important to identify what sex is, to define what it is and what those expectations are. Because so many men on the spectrum have these. If you're a guy on the spectrum, I'm talking to you. These definitions of what sex is and what it's supposed to be. And knowing what her definition and what her expectation is really, really critical and really important. Understanding what your definition of performance is and what hers is, it's really important. Some men feel like performance is just crossing the finish line for himself or for her. And sometimes that's not what it is. So it's just important that you both understand and know what the meanings, what the different kinds of sex are. There's different kinds of sex. You know, there's just, you know, sometimes you just want to get it on and get it over with, or not get it over with. Sometimes you just want to get it on. Sometimes you want to connect. Sometimes you want to bond. Sometimes you want to cuddle. Sometimes you want to marathon all night long. All of those definitions need to be clarified. And if you or he have a definition that is just, you know, this is what sex is and it's just this and it's always just this, you know, but somebody else has a definition that's different, all that's got to be put on the table and figured out. Angie, I just struggle feeling like that's all we're good for. So when you put out there, nice, but be nice to me just because, then I feel like putting out. So that's all we're good for. I'm hearing that there's a value, a belief there, that we as women, that's what we're good for. So this is something, this is something that's a pain for you, some kind of a value, a belief, a hurt that's coming up for you, a trigger that's coming up for you. That's something that needs to be healed. And so it's good that you're recognizing this, and this is something for you to do some healing. Some healing needs to be done there for you. and there's a reason for that. We all have our why. You know, I can see that you have had some, uh, that there's a reason why that definition's there for you, that pain and that hurt and that belief is there for you. And so that's what you're bringing to it. And it's important for us all to know that. All right, ladies, what else? What else have you got? I've got about 2 or 3 more minutes. And again, you can always drop comments in the feed after this is over, and I'll get to it. Usually try to check my check our group off and on throughout the day as I can, but at least at the end of the day, I drop on there and see what you guys are saying to me. All right. We're good? All right, ladies, thanks for showing up today and for being vulnerable. And this is a tough topic. And so thanks for being vulnerable. And I look forward to hearing any more that you have to say about it in the group. And again, if you weren't here at the beginning, keep a watch out probably Monday. I'm going to be starting enrollment for the 6-week group that we're going to be doing on this communication, all these 4 stages of communication. I think it's going to be a really, really great opportunity for some of you to get some coaching in with me one-on-one. Well, one-on-one, not one-on-one like private, but some really good actual coaching about your relationship. So, Janine, you want my email? So I'll drop it to you right now here in the feed. Jodi Carlton at spectrumrelationships.com. You guys can email me anytime. I try to check that and get back to folks once a day. And Lisa, you said you feel like it's not authentic. What is it that you're saying is not authentic? Before we drop off, I want to ask you what you mean by that. I didn't see your, hold on. I've been so angry for so long. I don't even want to be touched. I feel resentment at wanting hugs. That's what you're saying is not authentic. Okay. So, he's wanting hugs and you feel like that's not authentic and you've been angry for so long. Yeah. And so it may be that his wanting hugs from you is not, I guess it depends on what your definition of authentic is. This goes back to what we're bringing to an interaction. And when I say conversation, sexual conversation is an interaction. It's sometimes it's that hugging, it's that touching. Any kind of interaction is a conversation of sorts. So what is your definition of a hug? What's the meaning of a hug? And so when you say I feel like it's not authentic, that tells me that you have a definition, and we all do, of what a hug is supposed to be. And so the question I would have for you is to clarify, what is a hug? What is in a hug? What's the meaning of a hug? And what is the meaning for you? What is the meaning for him? But I'm also hearing from you that you've got a lot of anger there. And so that meaning of a hug to you is connection of some sort, and that you've got anger there, and there's kind of a wall there that you just sort of, you don't want to have that connection. You're just kind of like, I don't want that. For him, you're questioning his authenticity of wanting that to connect with you. And it may be that he's attempting that connection, or he may be running a script that he thinks this is what he's supposed to do. It's important to clarify what your definition and what his definition is. Got it, Lisa. Okay. You too, Angie. So much damage. There's damage. There is damage. You're right. There's damage. I want you guys to understand there's damage because of, there's so many layers here. The damage is from what you've brought to it, from what you both brought to it, and neither one of you knowing how to do this. And so the damage is there. And my private coaching folks, 2 of my couples this week, both actually, 2 of my couples, both, one said, I realize now so much that we've done to each other over the years. And two of them said that this week. there is a lot of damage, but I just want to say that as you learn about this and as you gain insight and awareness and you start to make shifts and adjustments, there is a snowball effect. It's exponential as it can start to change and improve your relationship. So there is hope. There is hope in the ability to make this better. Okay? All right, ladies. Happy Friday again. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Welcome to those of you who are new. Janine, I was really glad to see you here today. And I will be talking to you guys again soon. Have a great weekend. Bye.